Okay, welcome back to our look at old school essentials, which is by and large kind of our look at BX D&D. I mean, it would be interesting at some point to take a glance at those original books from like 81 or yeah, whatever, in 81. Just to see how those are written up, see how close this is. But I'm pretty sure this is meant to be a reproduction of those rules, outside of like the optional rules discussed throughout. So we're going to continue looking through this. We're going to make a few other characters, look at spells, blah, blah, blah. But before we do, I want to take a quick moment to look at another game. So this is White Hack. This is the 4th edition of White Hack. Now, White Hack is, I'm pretty sure it started as a hack of an OSR game of BXD&D. But nowadays, plenty of people consider this to be a new SR game. And the exact sort of definition and bridge and, the differentiator between the two categories is pretty murky. Generally, an OSR game is any game specifically based on an old school Dungeons and Dragons game. So usually BXD&D. But I think they also would say a game based on 1st edition AD&D or even 2nd edition AD&D is technically OSR. New SR is any game that is inspired by original D&D, but does not necessarily adhere to specific mechanics and broad compatibility with like original D&D modules. That's sort of the general difference. So many people consider Shadowdark actually new SR, even though it is broadly compatible with any module you'd pick up. It makes enough changes to modernize things that the grognards don't consider it to be OSR. White Hack also often considered new SR. Games like Knave or Maze Rats or Karn or Mork Borg, and there's a lot considered by plenty of people to be new SR. And then there's people that just consider it all OSR because it's all D20 based fantasy, ability scores, and relatively easy to convert a module over to their rule set. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. There's plenty of good games, however you want to differentiate it. But I wanted to take a quick look at White Hack. We've looked at Shadowdark plenty, so I wanted to offer just something a little different here that doesn't necessarily adhere nearly as much to original rules as OSE does. So it says here, this book contains a complete role-playing game with its roots in the original rules tradition. It's designed to run just about any material from 1974 onward with little or no conversion. So the book certainly seems to present itself as an OSR game, but we'll see that there's some big differences. The first thing is that this is a roll-under system, which is quite different and heretical for sure. So rather than trying to meet or beat a target number, you are trying to meet or roll under a number. Your attributes, your saving value, your attack value in order to do things. That means that a 20 is a critical fail or a fumble. A crit, however, is not a 1, but it's actually rolling your exact value. And sometimes you roll 2 dice and pick the best or worst, so advantage or disadvantage, also quite heretical to the old school crowd. and also something that's in Shadowdark. Characters are defined by groups and class, which are different things. Groups can include species, training, and social connections, whereas class is something completely separate. So you can have an elven fighter that's part of a secret council, but that does not any of that a class. So we'll see the few classes they have. Also, White Hack is generally brief in regards to stats and magic. So if you're a wise wizard and you learn a miracle named Identify, you don't look up and read a specific rules text telling you what Identify does. The title says what it is, and you can imagine what it might look like when coming from a wizard. Again, very different, very, or relatively unique. I would say kind of similar to like how Maze Rats does magic or something like that, where it's very free form. More based on just narrative potential and imagination. And in the same vein, players have influence over setting creation and development. That's also kind of a new age thing as well. Also, characters can reduce incoming damage by 1d6 once per battle if you save or succeed at a toughness roll. So you can survive, theoretically, even with 1 HP. So a little bit more, a little less lethality, leaning away from the OSR. And when characters die, referee has the option of letting them stay in the game in ghost form for the remainder of the session. And plenty of optional rules. Alright, and again, I don't want to go through this whole book as a let's read, but I just kind of want to point out, like, obviously, this community and this whole thing of people interested in, you know, older style, more freeform, more sandbox games, higher lethality, you know, that whole kind of OSR vibe of gaming. Anything that's not like modern, just like heavy story-based, you know, low lethality kind of gameplay or all that. I mean, there is a lot of variation here, and a lot of people have looked at old rules just like we have and are like, well, this is kind of dumb. Why should we do this just because it's the way it was done in 1981? So there's plenty of games that move past that concept. So character creation here for White Hack, you roll basic attributes, you pick a class, you might get offered a rare class by a DM. Then you roll your harm dice to get your harm points, and you re-roll that every level. Then you add species, vocation, and affiliation groups, roll starting funds, buy equipment, blah, blah, blah. And you see a bunch of example characters here. And so you can see the class is actually one of three things: strong, deft, or wise. And so the last term, which we normally associate with class, like alchemist, assassin, fighter, bard, paladin, that's part of your group, not your class. Attributes. These are 3d6 in order, so that's pretty old school. And strength, agility, toughness, int, will, charisma. Essentially the usual 6. And relatively, you know, standard definitions for each of the ability scores. Okay, so then the three classes. You have deft, characters that rely on spirit, technique, and skill. They may be thieves, wandering monks, spies, marksmen, rangers, or assassins. They choose a vocation group, and when properly equipped when rolling for a task or an attack in line with their vocation, they always use a positive double roll, so advantage. When they have combat advantage, they may swap this benefit for double damage if their vocation is relevant. A trader might do this when defending her cargo, and an assassin when striking from the shadows. So again, like very broad, flexible classes. When you distill everything down to 3 classes, you know. And I mean, that's relatively true. I mean, practically any character you can think of in very broad terms probably falls into one of these three: deft, strong, or wise. Strong characters rely on combat skills and physique. They get 2 free attacks. Damn. And they get the cleave thing from Axe, which is nice. Again, I don't want to go through this whole book, and I feel like I'll just get swept through it, and we'll just keep going. But I didn't. I just wanted to take a very brief look, and we're already 10 minutes in. Wise characters obviously perform miracles. They may be cultists, chemists, metamathematicians, exorcists, druids, bards, rune carvers, wizards. So they get spells, and they just get to pick what a spell does based on the name and their vocation and their desired effects, and they have to spend HP to cast it, I guess. And you can roll on this cool table to come up with cool spell names that just, again, that's very Maze Rats. So your vocation is like what you normally think of as your class: wizard, barbarian, or something similarly adventurous, but it can just as well be plumber or swineherder. So yeah, I mean, your character could be just a strong swineherder, and it's like, okay, I mean, whatever. Often you'll want to choose a vocation in line with your class, but it isn't necessary. Creating a deft wizard would effectively give you a character whose own magic is petty, but who is knowledgeable about magic in theory and good at reading spells from books and scrolls. A wise knight would be physically weaker than her peers, but still a good tactician with magic to back her up in battle. Again, like a much more free-form system in a lot of ways. A much lighter, flexible, kind of narrative-driven, more so than even old-school D&D. And it's got other mechanical differences here. I mean, this is not like a one-page RPG. I mean, this is not Maze Rats. There's obviously plenty of rules here. It's 148 pages long. So there's certainly quite a bit here. Plenty of optional rules, and there's rare classes you can get into as well. The brave, and the clever, the fortunate. And obviously, systems like this are very ripe for just making up new shit for your table as you go. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to look at that real quick, just to kind of show how varied exactly this whole community is. And I know OSE is the most popular, certainly a lot more popular than White Hack, but OSE benefits a lot from being just a reorganized version of the original rules, which is what a lot of people are kind of looking for. And being really well presented, very clean, very well organized. All the OSE material, the modules, the books, whatever, they're all very nicely presented. So that's a big factor. All right, anyways. Spells. We're moving on to spells. Spells are either arcane or divine, and your class determines which spells you can cast. Blah, blah, blah. Some spells are reversible. This is all pretty familiar stuff. You have to replicate the required set of hand gestures and mystical spoken words. When a spell is cast, knowledge of the spell is erased from the mind of the caster until it's memorized again. And it takes 1 hour to memorize all your spells after an uninterrupted night's rest. You must be able to speak and move your hands. Can't be gagged, bound, or in an area of magical silence. This is all normal stuff. Unless noted, has to be in line of sight. It's the usual kind of old school stuff. I mean, again, very similar to Axe and basically all OSR games. And yeah, so our mage would know one spell. He'd memorize one spell. He would only have one spell in his book. And whenever your number increases from leveling, You can increase the spells that are in your book by getting mentored by an arcane guild or a mentor, which takes a week. Or you can possibly research new spells entirely, as in make up new spells, I guess. Here you can't even take other spellcaster's books. Axe at least allowed for that, which I think was pretty good. And Axe, I think, also allowed, like, finding scrolls and stuff and copying those down. But here it says, each arcane spellcaster's spellbooks are written so that only the owner is able to read the spells without the use of magic. Lame. Magical research. Characters can create new spells from scratch, then create magic items. They can do other types of research, such as sanctifying a holy site or creating magical traps, constructs, or portals. And here we have the cleric spell list up to 5th level. The usual suspects: cure light wounds, detect evil, detect magic, light, protection from evil, purify food and water, remove fear, resist cold. Very classic cleric spells there. Nothing hostile whatsoever, except if you want to do cause light wounds. Yep. Magic user, 1st level, charm person, detect magic, floating disc, hold portal, light, magic missile, protection from evil, read languages, read magic, shield, sleep, ventriloquism. Yeah, and as usual, sleep is generally the best. Or charm person. But 1st level magic user, you get 1 per day, and it's probably not going to do much. That's usually how it goes on average. But then 3rd level, fireball, fly, haste, hold person, lightning bolt, invisibility, 10-foot radius. Oh my god. And then you get up to 6th level, and you're controlling the weather and disintegrating and moving earth and reincarnating, and oh yeah. So cure light wounds, pretty simple. You can heal a living subject for 1d6 plus 1, or you can cure paralysis. Cause light wound, you inflict 1d6 plus 1 on a touched creature, and a melee attack roll is required in combat. All these are pretty basic bitch spells that we have been encountering for 50 years now. These are all just very much staples of the genre. Not much to say, although you don't get blessed until level 2. 2nd level spells, I mean. And that's pretty big, because that lasts 6 turns, which is an hour. +1 to attack and damage rolls, and +1 to morale, as long as your allies are within 20 feet and not in melee. It's certainly not... I mean, I can't imagine anyone would really argue with this. It's not a very exciting spell list, right? Like, when I first looked at Shadow the Demon Lord, or Shadow the Weird Wizard, and you start reading about all these spells, even like lower level spells, it's just like, oh my god, that's so cool, that's so exciting, oh, I can't wait, oh god, oh man, so many choices that are just fantastic. Like, it's all very exciting stuff. Here, it's like, okay, well, let me see what I'd get as my cleric if I get up to 5th level spells, my max level. I can commune. I can ask the DM 3 yes or no questions once per week. And if the referee feels this spell is being overused, it might be limited to once per month. I'll tell you, this is a level 1 spell in Shadow the Weird Wizard. And it's like once per day. That's the difference there in the power level we're talking about. You can create food. Food sufficient for 12 humans and 12 mounts for 1 day. Yep, you sure can. You get insect plague. That's fun. Except it doesn't do any damage. And can't be cast if you're underground. Which you probably are, because you're doing dungeons. You can command a single subject to perform a specific quest or task, such as rescuing a prisoner, killing a specific monster, bringing a magic item to the caster, or going on a journey to a holy site. They must not be obviously suicidal, and they get a save. Raise dead. That's always big. That's good. I don't know if it's really exciting. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay, you can raise dead. And then they're really weak. They need 2 full weeks of bed rest. But then, oh, reverse it, you get Finger of Death. They have to make saving throw versus death or die instantly. Casting is a chaotic act, though, and it will only be used by lawful casters in desperate situations. That's it. That's your spells for cleric. Magic users get charm. Save versus spell or be charmed. Lasts indefinitely, but the subject is allowed to make further save versus spells at intervals depending on its int score. So on average, 1 save per week. It's, I mean, potent. Yeah, it's not bad. Make a floating disc to hold a bunch of shit. You can seal off a door or window. You can make light happen. Yep. Magic missile. Guaranteed to hit and deal 1d6 plus 1 damage. Once per day. But hey, if you only get into 1 fight per day, I mean, that's decently likely to kill a little goblin or something that you're fighting. So, there's that. But I would, like I said, lean towards sleep. You can target a single creature with 4 plus 1 hit dice, or a total of 2d8 hit dice of creatures of 4 hit dice or lower each. Now, I'm pretty sure... I don't know, it's not really clear here, but I'm reminded of that axe spell for Carnage, where it's indiscriminate. I don't know if this is meant to be indiscriminate, or if you're just meant to target specifically what you want to target. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, so say you're fighting, 8 goblins. So you walk into a room with 8 goblins and you cast sleep. And you target 8 goblins and you roll, I don't know, 8 or 9 on your 2d8. The average of that is 9. They all just fall asleep. They don't even get a save. They don't even get a save. And they just fall asleep. Until they're slapped or wounded. But they can be killed instantly with a bladed weapon. So assuming you shut down everything, you can just walk around and stab them in the throat with your sword, and you win a whole encounter. It's definitely the best level 1 spell for combat or anything. But I guess maybe you're not ever planning on getting into combat, and you'd rather have ventriloquism. To make your voice appear to come from any location or source within range. Yeah. I mean, level 2 is not really exciting either because you don't get any fun attack spells. There's no burning hands here. There's no flame arrow or anything like that. You get continual light, detect evil, detect invisible, ESP to like read thoughts, I guess. Invisibility is potentially good, but it's not. It's okay. It can be fun, but it's not damage. Knock to open locked shit. You can levitate for a while. You can levitate vertically, but you have to have things to push against to move horizontally. You can locate an object. Fun stuff. Create mirror images. But mirror images, so you make 1d4 illusory duplicates that last for an hour. And any attack against you, even if it misses, destroys one. And this would be your spell for the day. I mean, I guess, because otherwise it might just kill, you might just die from a hit. So I guess. I don't know. Like I said, it's just not thrilling to me. Often I want to look through a book, a fantasy book. I want to go to the spell section and just be like, oh my god, I can't. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I could bring up the Weird Wizard book if we want to do that for 20 minutes, but not really. Fireball. 240-foot range. Detonates in a 20-foot radius sphere. Creatures caught in the fireball suffer 1d6 damage per level of the caster. Save versus spells for half. That's it. Utterly simple. What more needs to be said? I mean, we played the Gold Box games. We know about Fireball. And it's pretty damn good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you'd ever pick anything different unless you're literally never planning to get in any combat ever. But if you are going to get in combat, Fireball. Fireball. Fly is fun, though, as well. That lasts a good amount of time. You get a bunch of... You move very fast by flying. You can make other creatures fly, blah, blah, blah. Haste, also good. Double movement rate. You get 2 attacks per round, or double attacks per round. No AC bonus or anything here. Lightning Bolt. Fireball's lesser cousin. Yeah. Charm Monster, Confusion. Confusion's a 2d6 roll each round. And if they roll a 9 or higher, they attack their own group, or 6 to 8, no action. So it's not bad. It lasts for 12 rounds, and even if they make their save that round, I mean, they're still affected by it the next round. They have to keep rolling. And if they're 2 hit dice or lower, they don't even get a saving throw. Not bad, but again, also another decent spell in the Gold Box games. Dimension Door to teleport. Growth of plants. Mass morph. Polymorph others. Polymorph self. Sure. Remove curse. Wall of fire. Wall of ice. 5th level spells. Cloud kill. Oh yeah. So if they have less than 5 hit dice, they have to save versus death each round or die. Everything else, everything just takes 1 point of damage per round. So that's not very much at that level, but yeah, against like you toss that into a big goblin lair or something and pretty devastating. conjure elemental, and you get all these stats for elementals. So fire elemental has 21 AC, 72 hit points, attacks for 3d8 damage with a plus 11 on the roll. Yeah, that thing could shred for sure. And it can only be harmed by magical attacks. Fuck. And it's a permanent duration until dismissed or slain. So fuck, drop that into a goblin lair. But casting 5th level spells, like, you're not really dealing with goblin lairs too much. You contact a higher plane, which is sort of like commune. Which might go insane. Disintegrate within 60 feet. Any non-magical creature or object is instantly and permanently destroyed. But creatures get a save versus death to resist. It can be any object. I like that it says a tree, a ship, or a 10-foot section of wall. Does that suggest that it's... If I target a wall, it only can target 10 feet of it? Whereas if I target a ship, any kind of ship, it just disintegrates the ship? Seems sort of odd distinction. I mean, certainly, like, back in 1981, if I didn't really, know anything else, sure, I mean, there's plenty of spells here. If I was a first level magic user and I'm looking at, like, okay, if I level up, I get fucking disintegrate, I can just disintegrate a whole ship. Oh my god. God damn. But the problem is that I know about other games. I know about games like Weird Wizard, where that's not that crazy. And there's way more insane stuff. Again, that's a different power scaling. Not everyone is interested in even more wild and powerful magic than that. But then there's also, like we looked at White Hack, where you just have a spell. You might know a spell called Disintegrate, and you don't even have this text. It's just, yeah, I have Disintegrate. What does it do? I don't know. We'll find out. We'll figure it out when we cast it and what I want to do with it. Or you have a spell called, Move Earth. And it's not clearly defined like this. It's much more narrative of, what do you want to do when I cast Move Earth? So, there's a lot of options. But overall, yeah, I'm just not incredibly excited by the spell list. The ideal size of a group is between 6 and 8 characters. Whoa, what a statement, Large enough to confront the challenges of the adventure, while not so large to be disorganized. Now, you would never ever say, in any context, the ideal size of a player group is between 6 and 8 characters. I mean, no matter what your feelings are about running a game for 6 to 8 people, you would never say it's ideal. So what does that mean? Because that is a very true statement, I think, in old school gaming like this. That's how it was. And so what that means is that players might control more than one character. Or they might hire retainers. And so you have your level 3 fighter, and with him, he has hired a level 1 fighter. I think it actually, didn't it suggest... guess it didn't suggest. Yeah, it doesn't really say who controls the retainer, but typically the player does. Typically the player does, because that's too much for the DM to juggle. And I think Axe went a little bit more into that, where it's like, henchmen, mercenary, whatever. They're all like actual characters. They're not just mindless blobs. They have their own thoughts and everything. They're characters. And although usually players are put in charge of controlling their own henchmen, that is not to mean that they control their actual like personality and everything. And so the DM does have say over like NPCs. But yeah, I mean, obviously, as you can imagine, if you have a group of 4 player characters and they each have hired a retainer, and so you have 8 characters going into battle, like, you're not going to sit there and flesh out all the retainers' personalities and stuff like that. But I think also, I can't say for this for certain, but it also feels like there was less emphasis overall on like characters' personalities and like their story and all that sort of stuff compared to nowadays. Back then, I mean, reading this and everything, it feels much more like a game, It feels like, okay, we have our stats on our sheet and everything, and we have our creativity, and we have the rules, and we're playing a game, and the game is about getting treasure, and the goal is to get as much treasure by going into dangerous situations and being clever and rolling dice, and it's a very gamified way of looking at it, whereas like modern D&D, assisted and influenced by all these like actual plays, critical role, that kind of stuff, it feels much more like interactive communal storytelling. Players are kind of encouraged to think about their characters and how they act. That's a very important part, and the role-playing aspect is a big factor, and DMs are kind of expected to craft narratives for the campaign rather than just a series of dungeons that hold treasure. Every dungeon has to have kind of an interesting story to it. Every adventure has to have a good story to it. I don't know. So in modern D&D, I'm gonna look this up now. Yeah. Okay. 5th edition does not even have rules for hirelings. Like, in the core rulebooks, they have no mention of hiring characters. Of hiring NPCs to go with them. Everything is meant to be focused on the player characters. And to be fair, it's not like player characters in 5th edition D&D need little level 0 hirelings to go with them in order to survive. But yeah, I mean, here you have a group of 4 players and they each have a retainer, so you've got 8 dudes stomping through a dungeon. And I think my point of all this is that I've never ran anything like that. And I don't know what it's like to run something like that. And I don't know what it's like to play in something like that. Because my only experience of RPGs is I have one character. This is my character. And all I have to worry about is every action and thought and whatever that my one character has. And so I feel like if you have the whole big party, 8 people, 8 individuals in the party. And I have a retainer with me, and my friend has a retainer with him, and another friend has a retainer, so on and so forth. I feel like it devolves more into just mechanical stuff, because how could it not? I feel like most of the time, or many times, you don't even care or think about your retainer being there. You don't think about them as like a character in any way. They're just like there when you need an extra body for some reason. And yeah, obviously there's going to be issues, problems where the fact that there are retainers there, that does come up. Like if you're all climbing a rope, all 8 have to climb the rope, and that blah 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 blah. But a lot of times it's just like, okay, they're just in the background until we get into a fight or something. And then suddenly you have to, especially individual initiative, all these retainers are rolling individual initiative. I can see why D&D has evolved as it has, And, I mean, believe me, I'm not a fan of 5th edition D&D. But you can see why RPGs in general have evolved over the years in various ways to kind of streamline things and start to, and obviously people's tastes have changed. I don't know how many people love the idea of, okay, we have our group and then we have our big group of retainers with us. I love the idea of mercenaries and managing like your troops of mercenaries on a larger scale and things like that. But going into a dungeon, that feels to me like where I really want a small scale. I want just the players, just, and just our abilities and our wits and stuff without needing extra bodies. And so that's why it's a very distressing statement to read that the ideal size of a group is between 6 and 8 characters, which is large enough to confront the challenges of the adventure. So, yeah, that means adventures are designed with you having just a bunch of bodies going into the dungeon. Now, why would that be? Why would that be if the whole point of the game, the whole point of this genre, is meant to incentivize and reward player creativity? This sounds like it rewards throwing bodies at a problem. As in, you're going to get into a fight, and if there's only 4 of you, you're going to die. But if you had hired 4 more dudes to just, swing a sword, then you win. And I'm not, I believe that that's kind of how it is. I just don't think that's good. I also think it's somewhat realistic. Like, absolutely, I would want to hire a bunch of goons to go with me and carry a shield and a sword and swing at the goblins with me, so that we're not outnumbered. But you can see how games have developed over time so that, okay, you don't need to hire retainers because you are worth, 2 or 3 men by yourself. You are special. You are a very capable fighter, and you could take down 3 ordinary men. You're a very capable wizard, and you can blast spells, that could kill a few men. So, no, you don't need to bring a troop of soldiers into a dungeon with you because it's, you are worth a few men each. And to me, I just find that to be a more pleasurable concept of gaming. Yeah, that's That's my thought on that. And that was quite the tangent based on one line of text here. Anyways. I like it to, as new PCs join play, the experience levels of characters in the party may diverge. It's recommended that characters more than 4 levels apart should adventure separately, as challenge and reward suitable to characters of greatly different experience levels do not match. How the hell are you meant to do that? Oh no, you can't come on Saturdays anymore, Phil. You're gonna have to just sit here with me on Thursday night, and I'll run you through an adventure by yourself, and hopefully you can hire a lot of retainers. Because you're going to need like 7 of them. Or you just, I don't know. What does that mean? Honestly, what does that mean? Because the rules, again, the rules state that if you die, you go to level 1, 0 XP. So if you're in a level 8 group and you die, you go back to level 1. And now it's saying, oh, well, it's recommended that they should actually adventure separately. And so now you're just out of the group. And you're not going to sit there and divide the party mid-session or during a session and say, okay, well, they're going into the tomb of the, you know, the ancient deity. But you're level 1, so you're going to have to go on a separate adventure into Old Lady Jenkins' cellar where there's a bunch of rats. And we'll just keep flipping back and forth between you. Like, it's just... Ugh. That's all I can say about it. Is ugh. Like you're creating. It's just like this slavish dedication to the way things were, and it's just like. And I know. I mean, that's what this is. Like, I can't be too upset about reading all this, because it's just like, that's what OSE is. It's just a recreation of the rules as they were. But, yeah, the rules as they were very, very stupid. I don't know. I'm pointing it out just specifically because this is not normally what I hear. Normally when I hear people discuss this type of game and starting a new character like that at level 1, it's really just like people say, oh, well, you know, you'll level up very quickly. You'll just level up very quickly because they're going to get so much treasure at level 8 that your level 1 dude is going to... He's going to level up very quickly. I've never heard this idea of adventure separately. Here you go. The default is to restart at level 1. Because of the way the exponential XP scaling works, a new level 1 character will generally be 1 level behind the rest of the party by the time the rest of the party gains 1 level. Oh, but this person also is using the axe rule for reserve XP, which I agree is fantastic. So this wouldn't really even enter into consideration unless the player really didn't want to spend money to reserve XP. But it also depends on when you're awarded XP, because if you're only awarded XP when you return to civilization after getting treasure, that means that your level 1 guy has to go through the whole dungeon. Before he can level up, and then suddenly he'll be like level 6 or something. I don't know. And then you enter into the whole problem of, I don't know, you know, in general, gold as XP is just... I mean, for the record, I also don't like monster killing as XP or anything like that. I am very firmly in the milestone leveling camp, and I have been for years. I don't know when we first started doing that with my group, Honestly, it was probably still when we were playing 4th edition. I mean, 4th edition obviously had killing monsters, got you XP, and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure there was other ways to get XP, but before long, we were like, why keep track of all this? Just, like, tell us, you know. I do remember the early days of tracking XP, and you got excited watching your XP total tick up and up and up. And we were playing D&D in a pretty basic kind of 4th edition monster killy kind of way. I mean, we were doing a lot of fights, so we were certainly leveling up. But yeah, eventually Milestone took over, and now that's just like, it's hard for me to imagine playing any game without Milestone. Because, like, treasure should obviously be its own reward. And that means ideally there's a good things to spend your money on. And then, like, killing monsters should never really be the goal. And then you have to think about, like, okay, well, how did we, did we circumvent the monsters, or did we just avoid monsters? And like, it's this whole other kind of vagary thing. And it's just like, just tell me when I level up and it'll be good. Okay, well, the mapper section here is obviously a lot different than Axe. There's no special rules for the character that's mapping out the dungeon and how they're vulnerable and stuff while they're holding the map. So that's good. Tracking time, tracking movement. This is all fairly standard stuff. Those encumbrance rules. Ability checks. So the referee may use a character's ability scores to determine the character's chance of succeeding at various challenging tasks. So not everything is just like a 2 and 6 or something. Like, things are based on your ability scores sometimes. And bonuses or penalties to the roll may be applied from -4 to +4. Natural 1 is treated as a success. Oh, this is roll under. Yes, this is also roll under, for specifically for ability checks. It's so dumb. Again, it's just it's so poor. You look at White Hack, right? We looked at White Hack. That was roll under for everything, right? It was designed top to bottom for roll under. So there's no ambiguity there. You sit down and say, okay, this is a roll under system. You're always going to be trying to equal or roll under a number. But here, it's just the roll under is specifically for ability checks, not for saving throws. And it wouldn't even been that difficult for them to just make saving throws a roll under number. And I don't mean the OSC people. I mean, fucking Gary Gygax and company. Why specifically do ability checks? And that's because they didn't really have modifiers for ability checks. Not really. They had a couple of those things, and they apply it to only very specific stuff. Your strength is only applied to melee attacks and damage and opening doors and stuff. And your wisdom is applied specifically to your saves versus magic. There wasn't just a general, like, okay, you have a strength of 16, so you have a plus, 3 strength mod. So the modifiers for ability checks are, the modifiers that you have for those are not what they mean by modifiers. The modifiers here are just like situational bonuses or various penalties that might apply. So -4 to +4. And then it's just like, yeah, for these, just roll under. Because if you have a high score, you roll under. I get it. No, I mean, I'm not against a roll under system. The point is that they couldn't coalesce all of this into a concrete system So you just have things that are kind of incongruent with other systems, and that makes it really confusing. Like, basically, in a vacuum, if this never existed and we developed RPGs independently, blah, 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 and it was 2025, and somebody put out this game, Old School Essentials, it would be kind of just mocked and torn apart. Is kind of my point. This is it's a relic of like a bygone era. You know. I think the game is perfectly playable. But it's stuff like that that's just like, if I'm going to introduce a person to tabletop RPGs, why would I ever pick this specifically? And I think I've even seen comments suggesting exactly like OSE is not a good introduction to RPGs or even the OSR. Especially if you're like new to DMing completely, because OSE just provides like practically no examples of any kind. It assumes too much about what you already might know and things like that about like old school D&D play and tabletop RPGs, and a lot of other things like that. OSE is just a good reproduction of the original rules, but people even say like, really, you probably want to just get the original rules if you're new, because I guess the original sets provided a lot more examples, which isn't surprising because it was intended for people new to tabletop RPGs. All right. You die at 0 hit points or less. If you're killed by a destructive spell or special attack, your equipment is assumed to be destroyed. For each full day of complete rest, you recover 1d3 hit points. This is all just like Axe. Saving throws, blah, blah, blah. We know about those. And that is rolling equal or above on your specific saving throws. Various other things that can arise, such as climbing. That might require an ability check against your dexterity. Darkness, getting lost, falling, starvation, swimming, wandering monsters. Chance of a random encounter is usually 1 in 6. Yep, this is all pretty standard. Secret doors, stuck doors, doors swinging shut. Doors opened by adventurers are likely to swing shut after they pass. Really? This is something I never assumed, actually. And it's sort of weird. Why? Are they on a spring or something? Is there a lot of wind passing through dungeons that these get just slammed shut? Why would they just close on their own? Why would that be the assumption? And you have to use iron spikes or wedges to hold them open? No. No. I would just steadfastly refuse this section of text here. Doors opened by adventurers are likely to stay open after they pass. How about that? What the hell? I don't know. Listen at doors. You have a 1 in 6 chance by default. Blah, blah, blah. Characters must rest for 1 turn every hour in the dungeon. And if they don't rest, they suffer a penalty of -1 to attack and damage rolls until they rested for 1 turn. And yeah, so I mean, this is definitely something more unique to old school games. Practically most OSR kind of games is the idea of detailed timekeeping, because Gary Gygax was very adamant about this. And so when you're in a dungeon, you always need to know how much time is passing, you know, how many turns have gone by while they're moving through the dungeon, because that just affects a lot of things. That affects torch timers, lantern timers, wandering monsters, your rest, you know, plenty of different abilities, so you're always keeping track of time. And that's something I always struggle with, because I'm just never quite sure how much 10 minutes has passed by. But that's why they're very specific about your movement rate when exploring unknown, to simplify things a little bit. So they're moving their base movement rate in feet every 10 minutes. And so that's why it's important for you to know specifically how long or big certain sections of the dungeon are. I don't think it's the best system. I'd prefer some more modern takes on the idea of like random encounters and stuff, where like the underclock system, where if they enter a new room, the underclock gets ticked down by, a d6 or whatever. And if they go back through like 3 rooms they've already been in, the underclock ticks down again. I think that's just a lot easier to keep track of. And I don't know how many people are doing this 1 turn of rest every hour, or they suffer a penalty. I don't know how many gamers are doing that at their table. But yeah, like if you spend a turn searching a room or searching for traps or searching for something like that, obviously that's gonna take up time. That's another random encounter check. But yeah, the resting thing specifically, I don't know how much that comes up, because it's not very heroic and it's not very exciting. It's just like, yeah, characters, definitely like rest is a factor, but usually that comes from like mechanical, like player driven necessity, as in they're like, fuck, we're weak, we're low on health, we don't have any, we need to bandage up, or we need to recover our spells. Should we try and find a safe spot somewhere in here to rest? I think there was a room back there we could seal shut. Or should we just like leave the dungeon and come back another day? Very player driven decision. Whereas this is like, hey guys, here's my watch. It's been an hour, you fucks. You better be resting. It's like, come on, Dad. Let us just play the game, please. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. Then you have wilderness stuff for foraging, hunting. Again, Axe went into like a billion more details than this, but this is good enough probably for most games that don't really want to get into the nitty-gritty calculating numbers and all that. But still, I mean, there's terrain modifiers here. Pretty simple, but terrain modifiers. If you get surprise, visibility in certain terrain, but it's kept pretty vague. I mean, there's not specific numbers here for visibility, depending on weather and terrain and stuff. It's just like, yeah, it might sometimes be reduced or increased. Wandering monsters in the wilderness typically rolled once per day, but it might be more if you're in dangerous areas. And the chance depends on terrain. 1 in 6 in settled lands, grasslands, cities. Yeah, cities, it can happen. 2 in 6 in forests, hills, barren areas. 3 in 6 in the jungles, mountains, and swamps. Rules for water stuff, which mostly doesn't ever get used. Then actual encounters, and we get into combat finally. So checks for surprise. There's no surprise matrix here. Check is made for any side that is not expecting the encounter. Yeah, that's pretty simple. Yeah, I don't know if you need to get more complicated than that. Calculate foreknowledge and line of sight and all this, and just like, oh my god. It's a surprise. They're surprised. Call it a day. Characters or monsters that carry a light in a dark environment are usually unable to surprise opponents. That's true. And the surprise check is a 1d6. And a result of 1 or 2 means the side is surprised, which is the same as Axe. And it's entirely side-based. There's no initiative here. Or there's no individual surprise. And if one side is surprised, they gain a 1-round advantage. Surprise side cannot act that round. Then you also want to determine encounter distance sometime, how far away they are, which in a dungeon is 2d6 times 10 feet. This is not always necessary. You know, this is usually for like wandering monsters in a relatively open area of the dungeon. But, you know, if you kick in a door and there's monsters there, you don't really need to roll that. Initiative. 1d6 at the start of each round for each side, and the side with the highest roll acts first. Again, this was something that I harped on quite a bit in Axe that I didn't like, was individual initiative. I think that's just way too slow and just too much bookkeeping. You have to keep track. You have to like write down every round what each person's initiative is, what the monster initiative is, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just too much. Just do fucking side-based initiative. I'm curious if this is the actual BX initiative rules. Like it wasn't individual rolls or anything like that. Yeah, I guess this is how it was. Yeah, wow. Okay. So even way back then, they just did very simple side-based initiative, and that's still like just the best way to go. So good for them. Fuck all that D20 plus dex rolls and nonsense, and oh god, so stupid. I really hope Wizards of the Coast just ditches that. Go back to the way it was. Alright, sometimes you might have to roll a reaction roll. If one character attempts to speak with a monster, can be influenced by charisma. Blah, blah, blah. Any action is possible in an encounter, but following are common. Combat, evasion, parlay. So if you try to avoid an encounter, that's evasion. It's only possible before combat has begun. Now here, okay. Yeah, okay. Very specifically, you can actually evade an encounter in a dungeon, whereas Axe was just like, nope, not possible. Literally impossible. It's too cramped and close quarter in a dungeon. You can't run away. You can run away from combat, but you can't do this evasion thing. The referee decides whether monsters pursue fleeing PCs. Oh, yeah, and monsters can just decide to evade before combat begins, too. So if they win initiative and then are like, well, we don't want to stick around, they just run, and then players have to decide if they want to pursue. And you compare the two sides' movement rates. So if the fleers are faster, they just succeed. And if the fleers are not faster, then a pursuit occurs, and you got pursuit rules. Also, running is not just in a straight line or a gradual curve. You just run at your base movement rate in feet per round. Okay. You drop food. You throw burning oil or shit. Yada, yada, yada. Evasion in the wilderness, blah, blah, blah. Okay, combat. So again, this is initiative per round. And that's true, you know, doing like modern individual-based initiative where everyone rolls a d20 and adds their initiative to it. That is typically only done once at the start of combat, and then that's the order every round. Compared to this, where, again, the usual problem is that one side can go twice in a row. which can be very deadly or swingy one way or the other. At the end of the day, you know, I'm always going to prefer, like, alternative initiative stuff. Like Shadow Demon Lord or Weird Wizard, where players have much more control over when they want to go each round, but there are benefits and drawbacks. Giving up a reaction to go first, or, you know, being able to move and attack in Demon Lord by going slow. Stuff like that. Combatants attacking with two-handed melee weapons and some missile weapons always act last in the round as if they had lost initiative. You can roll individual initiative, but meh. Blah, blah, blah. When in melee with a foe, you can only do a fighting withdrawal, moving backwards at up to half your encounter movement rate. There must be a clear path for this movement. Or you can retreat, turn, and flee from melee, moving up to their full encounter movement rate, which is different than Axe, so it's just up to your encounter movement rate, not your running rate. And that round you may not attack, and the opponent gets +2 bonus to all attacks against you, and ignores any AC bonus due to your shield. You can't shoot a missile weapon at somebody next to you. At short range, you get +1 bonus. Long range, -1. Cover, partial cover can be between -1 and 4, depending on the DM. Didn't we see somewhere that you have to declare that you're casting a spell? I don't see that rule anywhere mentioned here. Oh, here. Players must inform if they intend to cast a spell or move when in melee. Other actions need not be declared. And the reason for that is mostly due to this disrupting thing, I think. Because without this, you'd have to just keep track of, like... Well... One, it allows enemies the opportunity to disrupt you because they can see you're casting a spell. But on the flip side, it allows the players to interrupt the spellcaster on the enemy side because they can see they're casting a spell. They don't just whip it out on their turn and that's it. And so you could say, the gold box games. The gold box games, I'm pretty sure, like, even if it's not your turn yet, you haven't made any... but they could just simplify that for a video game. Because if you get hit there before you even get a chance to start casting a spell, for that round, you can't cast. So that probably is just a simplification for the video game. But the idea is pretty much the same. That you have to be starting to cast. You have to be able to be disrupted. So it's an intention at the start of the round. And that represents, like, the time that it might take to cast the spell. And it's a full round. You can't move and cast a spell in the same round. No other actions. You are casting that spell. It's a very, dedicated activity. Natural 20s always hit, 1s always miss, some monsters are immune, PCs normally attack once per round, you can move and attack in the same round, does not specify that you have to move first. You can, I guess you can attack and then move, it doesn't say you can't. So, variable weapon damage, I feel like most people are going to do this, but... otherwise, all your PC attacks deal 1d6 damage. Whether it's a great sword or a short bow, it's d6 damage. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you would do it. It's just like the game's already homogenous as it is. You may have some differences. You may as well have some differences so you can differentiate between a two-handed sword and a dagger. Yeah, default rules. Two-handed sword does the same amount of damage as a dagger. And the only difference is just like thematic. Like I want to use a two-handed sword. Or narrative. And you start getting into more narrative discussion, which is, I don't know. I don't know if that was the intention when they made these rules. That like narratively a dagger is a very different weapon in a situation compared to a two-handed sword. Like, you know, if you're playing Dungeon World, that's mostly how it works in Dungeon World or one of those kind of games. Where it's like you can do things narratively with a two-handed sword or a spear that you just can't do with a club or a dagger or something. Even though damage might be pretty similar or the same even. It depends on the fiction. Don't know if that's the intention here. I don't know. Go with variable weapon damage. If you attack from behind, AC bonuses from shields are negated. What is behind an enemy? I don't know. Are you keeping track of facing? I hope. You better be. Because otherwise, how are you going to know from behind? Jeez. What do people have to say about that sort of issue? And again, the game's not written with a grid in mind. So this is all theater of the mind. So it's like, am I behind this guy? It's really up to the DM. Axe definitely codifies so much more of this kind of stuff, so there's not really any ambiguity. But yeah, it's just kind of up to the fiction and up to the DM, and it's like, you know, in Axe, it was very clear about, like, you can't, like, circle around an opponent once you're engaged, and, you know, facing is very important, and enemies can do free-facing changes when you engage them, so you can't just walk up behind them and stab them, blah, 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 blah. Here, it's just like, I don't know. Are you behind him? You tell me. I'll tell you. We'll figure it out. Paralyzed opponents... spacing, subduing if you want to not kill somebody, unarmed attacks, unstable surfaces such as the ship in rough seas, riding a flying animal. Cannot cast spells in that case. Fighting in or beneath water. Morale rule. This is an optional rule. Jeez. Don't make morale optional. That's very important. Yeah, so here every monster has a morale score. And you're rolling 2d6 against their morale score. Axe did it definitely differently, where you have a morale modifier, potentially. And then you're rolling 2d6. And it's not a binary decision. It's not just will they fight or will they flee. It's like they might run away in a panic. They might try and fighting withdrawal. They might just keep fighting. Or they might really, like, try and pursue you now to the death or something. Yeah. But morale's good. Here's the attack matrices. And it goes into, like, DM advice on how to run an adventure. And this is valuable stuff. It's always hard for me to, like, read or even, you know, judge this kind of stuff, because it's like I don't remember what it was like anymore to not be familiar with tabletop RPGs. So I'm never sure, like, how good of advice or not it is for somebody brand new to these games, because I can't get in that mindset anymore. If the level of PC wealth has gotten out of hand, the referee may wish to find ways to take excess money away from characters. This should always be done in such a way as to present the player with a choice. For example, pay a local tax or become an outlaw. For fuck's sake, why not just let your players have things to spend money on? You're just creating, like, bullshit solutions to bullshit problems. Anyways. They do have some mention here for using miniatures on a grid. Standard scale and blah, blah, blah. There's not much info there. Again, compared to Axe or something. General advice. Different types of adventure scenarios that are possible. And I would say those are certainly 10 of the more common scenarios that'll pop up. Then you get into designing a dungeon, and obviously this is all DM stuff. Monsters, those are always fun. And yeah, old school D&D, very simple. Definitely not throwing creatures here with just gobs of abilities or anything. There's like a very basic description of the creature, their mechanical stats. All bears get this bear hug ability, or if they hit same target with both claw attacks, they also hug for an extra 2d8 automatic damage. So yeah, bears are very dangerous. 13 AC, 18 hit points, 2 claw attacks, 1 bite attack at +3, possible automatic 2d8 damage. If you get hit with both the claws, I mean, you're already in kind of rough shape, but then you get hit with 2d8 automatically. And then the bite. Yeesh. Pretty simple. Fire beetles. You might think that they have some sort of fire ability, but no, they just cast light in a 10-foot radius, and if removed, they keep glowing for 1d6 days. You'll also notice there's not really any, like, there's no encounter building, like, guidelines or anything like that. That concept is very relatively modern, you know? It was more about this NA number, the number of appearing. So when you encounter them, you roll how many are appearing in a group. Some creatures, you know, are relatively solitary, like bears, like cave bears. You're going to encounter 1d2, so 50% chance there's only one of them. But that's it. You're not going to encounter 30 cave bears at once. But then other creatures, especially more like sapient creatures, they are traveling in big groups. And depending on the role, yes, it is possible to find 3 berserkers and come across them randomly. But on average, you're going to be encountering like 15 of them. Black puddings, you only encounter 1 ever. But brigands, 1d4 times 10. And for every 20 brigands, there's a leader. 2nd level fighter. For every 40, there's a commander. 4th level fighter. Leaders ride war horses and have plate mail, sword, and lance. They commonly combine and live in a camp of 5d6 times 10 brigands. So, yeah, you're not ever encountering 1 brigand out on the road. Unless, like, the DM just has, like, a plot in mind or a thought in mind or something. But, yeah, usually everything was dictated by these number appearing. Bugbears. 2d4. Actually, I don't know. What's the first and second number there? Hold on. First value is 0. Monsters of this type are not usually encountered in dungeons. If the second value is a 0, monsters of this type are not usually encountered in the wilderness. Okay. The first number is dungeons. So you don't ever find black puddings in the wilderness. And you don't ever find brigands in dungeons. That makes sense. And that's because these games were not designed to be balanced. They were designed to somewhat simulate a fantasy world. They were designed, you know, for like hex crawls and just open-ended, and just why would there be, you know, 5 bandits or 3 bandits just kind of walking through the wilderness or whatever. Nowadays, many games just are designed with a game in mind of like balanced encounters, because people don't want to encounter 300 orcs, you know, and have to deal with that out in the wilderness. They just bump into 300 orcs. But this was just more meant to simulate a fantasy world in a lot of ways. I don't know which one is better. I probably don't mind this style of just number appearing. It's an extensive enough bestiary as far as like all the staples that you would imagine for D&D. Or many of the staples. I don't think it has every last thing that we kind of... Because obviously they developed new ones as they went that became kind of iconic. I do want to look at the dragon real quick, but I want to see... Yeah, like they don't have Beholder. That doesn't exist yet. They do have Blink Dog. So there's that. But there's probably quite a few here. I wonder if they have Gelatinous Cube. I don't know when everything was introduced or anything. They do have Gelatinous Cube. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, they probably got quite a few of the staples here. As for dragons... Ooh, plenty. I mean, it's Dungeons and Dragons. There's got to be extensive amount about dragons. So, goes into quite a bit here about their various abilities. They got a breath weapon, energy immunity. Some dragons are able to speak. There's a percentage chance to encounter them when they're sleeping. A sleeping dragon may be attacked for 1 round with a +2 bonus to hit. Dragons may sometimes pretend to be asleep. Will surrender if reduced to 0 HP by non-lethal attacks, admitting that it has been defeated. Wow. They'll attempt to escape or attack its captors. Subdued dragon may be sold for up to 1,000 gold pieces per HP. That's quite a bit. So you got black dragons, deal acid damage on their breath. 31 HP, 17 AC. I mean, 17 AC is pretty high, but compare that to like the gold dragon, 21 AC, 49 hit points. Breath weapon of fire or chlorine gas. Bite attack 6d6 +8 on Thaco. And you encounter 1d4 of them. Yeah, I didn't even see that. All these dragons are likely to be encountered in multiples. That's not normally what you picture nowadays, I think. Normally always a dragon is a very solitary creature. But these are all going to be together. Huh. Well, then that's very dangerous, isn't it? Yeah, that's where you hire a whole group of retainers and just try and wait till it's sleeping and then go in and just butcher it. Yeah, anyways. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Nice. Dwells in Lost World regions. 16 AC, 90 HP, 66, +13. That's pretty hefty. That's pretty hefty, man. But they are solitary. You will only encounter one at a time in the wilderness. And they go after the largest target first. Vampires are big. A lot of abilities. A lot of special stuff about vampires. They're not super powerful. 17 AC and like 36 HP. But they deal energy drain, which is fucking awful. Because you permanently lose 2 XP levels. That's it. And there's no, like, it's not for like a day, or this is permanent loss of 2 XP levels. Horrible. And they can charm you. And the real kicker is they appear in groups. 1d4 in dungeons, 1d6 in the wilderness. And they can summon creatures from the surrounding area. You gotta deal with 3d6 wolves. Crazy, man. I don't know. It's this whole system, the whole concept of like actual OSR gameplay just seems so wild and foreign and just like an alternate dimension of games that I've never experienced and really never will. Because honestly, I mean, why would I? Why would I ever experience actually playing OSE in a group? If I'm playing solo, I'm probably going to want something that's just more crunchy and more modern. You know, I'm going to pick Shadow the Weird Wizard or Pathfinder or Shadow Dark, which isn't that crunchy, but it's a lot more modern. If I'm DMing for my family, I would never pick this because it's far too lethal and, you know, just... It's far too lethal, I guess, in general. And then it's like, I'll either pick something much more heroic, powered, you know, high-powered, like Weird Wizard, or I'll pick something much lighter and more narrative, like a Maze Rats or a Dungeon World or something. If I'm going to DM for a group of friends, they typically would prefer something crunchier with a lot more options for their characters and, you know, customization. So it's going to be like a Demon Lord, a Weird Wizard, or 13th Age or something. And then if I were to play, and I could play any game of my choice, it probably would be Shadow Dark or Weird Wizard or Demon Lord. You know, one of those. Again, similar. It's just I also just love character customization and high-powered options and all that sort of stuff. Or Shadow Dark for just like the free form, you know, the modularity of it, while also just having really good, simple rules. So yeah, this I can't ever actually imagine playing OSE or running it. That's sort of where I'm at. Okay. Then you get into, I mean, we skipped over quite a bit, but like treasure types. So every monster that has treasure, and for modules and stuff, or, you know, things like that, you might have these treasure groups, these treasure hordes. So like if you find a goblin lair, you know, it might list for their horde is a type C or something. And so then if they get to the horde or you're populating the horde, you would you'd roll a D100 for this first time, this first line. And if you got 20% or less, you could roll then a D12 times 1,000 copper, then the silver one, the EP one, gems, pieces of jewelry, and then magic items. And this is going to average out to around 1,000 gold pieces. But if it's significantly above or below that number, you can adjust the results manually. That's basically it. And then there's individual treasures. So, you know, I don't know, fucking wyvern or something. I don't know. It might have a type R. And so you just roll 2d6 EP. What's weird is I don't know why for individual treasures you couldn't just put this in the stat block, I guess. But then there's also group treasures. And most creatures are encountered in groups, so... I don't know. Magic items. Wishes. Blah, 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 so on and so forth. Yes. And then you get into actual lists of magic items. Cursed armor and shields, enchanted armor and shields, miscellaneous fun stuff like a bag of holding, a displacer cloak, flying carpet, gauntlets of ogre power. What it makes me think of, and the thought that sort of enters into my head when I look at some of this stuff, and thinking about playing this solo. My honest thought is that I'd rather just play Magic Realm solo. Which is a board game, yes. But I think it would capture a lot of the same feeling while just being a more enjoyable game than playing solo. Where I'd either have to... Yeah, just like... If I'm interested in running like kind of pretty lethal, like risky, dangerous stuff... that's kind of contingent on dice rolls, but also contingent on clever play and stuff. Magic Realm sort of just hits this like kind of really old school D&D feeling for me over just playing OSE by myself. Which is an odd thought because they're very different, and I generally prefer RPGs over board games, but it's sort of a specific instance here. All right. Yeah, I mean, what else is there really to say? We can look at, we can go over and look at some of the advanced classes. So if that basic stuff is not cutting it for you, there's the advanced shit. There's quite a few classes here. Oh, then there's also option rules for secondary skills. So this is basically a background, as a lot of games have it. So you might be a huntsman, or a potter, or a tanner. And this allows you to assess the value and quality of an item associated with the skill, make minor repairs to those items, construct simple items. That's about it. Okay. So your class could be acrobat, and you do acrobatic shit, such as mostly the acrobatic thief skills. You can only use leather armor, missile weapons, basic weapons. You're good at falling. You suffer no damage from the first 10 feet of any fall. And damage after that is reduced by the listed percentage. So at level 1, 25% less falling damage. Eventually, 75% less falling damage. Boy, you can really fall, man. You can also walk tight ropes and narrow beams at up to half your normal movement rate. When retreating from melee, an acrobat's ability to tumble negates the opponent's usual +2 bonus to hit. Okay. You're good at jumping. And when using falling or jumping abilities, you can make a tumbling melee attack, which inflicts double damage if successful. If it's unaware, you get a +4 bonus to hit. So if you jump into a room and slash down at an orc, you get a +4 bonus and a double damage on a hit. I don't know. I mean, if I was in a group and player was like, I guess I can play a thief. Actually, I'm going to play an acrobat. I'd be like, oh, man. Really prefer a thief. No lockpicking. No backstab. I mean, they get tumbling attack, I guess, but that's only falling or jumping. So even if they just sneak up on someone, they can't backstab them for double damage. Assassin, though. There you go. Assassination. When attacking an unaware humanoid from behind, +4 bonus to hit. If it succeeds, they must save versus death with a penalty depending on the assassin's level. If they fail, the victim is instantly killed. That's what we're talking about right there. They also don't get lockpicking. But, you know, there's that. Killing. They can also don disguises. They're masters of it. Everyone the assassin meets has a 2% chance of spotting the disguise. This roll is repeated once every subsequent day of meeting. Yep. Assassins of 1st to 3rd level may not employ retainers, mercenaries, or specialists. From 4th level, they may hire other assassins of lower level. 8th level, thieves. And from 12th level, anybody. Oh, you can only assassinate humans/demi-humans of any level and humanoid monsters of up to 4+1 hit dice. So no assassinating the dragon. Lame. Barbarian. Not what we normally think of as a barbarian. They get an AC bonus that scales. They get to climb sheer surfaces, hide in undergrowth, move silently. It's very Conan barbarian, I should say, not modern D&D barbarian. They can gather herbs to cure poison. They have a fear of magic. They can forage and hunt. Now, they are able to damage invulnerable monsters from 4th level on. And that's it. So no rage of any kind. Very, very Conan barbarian. Bards get enchantment. They get divine magic. They get anti-charm. Countersong. Spoonie had also a great story about countersong. Caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland trying to charm the whole group. Yeah. Cleric. Oh, yeah, okay. I was like, because that was the first, yeah. They include the normal classes here. Like, Cleric, I'm pretty sure that was in there. Drow? Boy, they can detect secret doors. They get divine magic. Immunity to ghoul paralysis. Infravision. Light sensitivity. They can listen to doors. They have spider affinity. Interesting. So they're pretty close to clerics. But they can use all types of weapons and armor. Huh. The Drow class. Druids. They get divine magic. They get energy resistance. Pass without trace. They can pass through natural environments without leaving any tracks. Pathfinding. Avoid getting lost. At 7th level, they do get shape change. Cool. The Durga. Grey Dwarves. A lot of the same stuff, but they do get mental powers once per day per level. They can double their body in size for 1d4 rounds, and well enlarged, they deal double damage on melee. Well, that's pretty great. Invisibility, shrinking, the opposite way, blah, blah, blah. Heat. Creature or object with insight is subjected to a scorching heat. One round per level, the Durga creature takes 1d4 damage per round. Some, you know, fun little differences here. Gnomes. David the Gnome. They get arcane magic. Blah, blah, blah. They can use any weapon appropriate to their stature. Pretty similar to halflings, but they can speak with burrowing mammals. Half-elves get arcane magic, can use all types of weapons and armor, protect secret doors and infravision. So they're basically fighters that get arcane spells. How is this different than an elf? They don't get a spell at first level. Why would I pick this over an elf? I guess they can go to level 12. Okay. Half orc. Ooh, they get some thieving skills and pickpocket. They have trouble with retainers. They do get backstab. Wild. It's a very different half orc than you're used to. They can only go to level 8, though. Fucking half orc. Illusionist. This is a class. You get arcane magic. But how is this different than a magic user? I don't understand. Oh, maybe they have their own spell list or something? Knights. Chivalric Code. They're excellent riders. They can expect hospitality from level 3 onward. Strength of will. Paladins, of course. Divine magic, immune to all disease, lay on hands, turn undead. Fuck yeah, paladins. Definitely do not get as much divine magic as player. They don't get a spell until level 9, of course. But they're paladins. And at level 4 or higher, you can summon a holy charger. Warhorse with AC 14, a movement rate of 180. If the horse dies, another may not be summoned for 10 years. Oh my god. Rangers get divine magic, stealth in the wilderness, foraging and hunting. Very wilderness oriented. Not too great in a dungeon. Svervneblin. Deep gnomes. That's that. Okay, there's all your advanced classes. Probably something in there for you, I'm sure. Yes, okay. So illusionists do get different spell lists than magic users. So if you pick magic user, you don't get access to auditory illusion, but you do get access to chromatic orb as an illusionist. Holy shit. Druids get their own spell list, of course. Chromatic orb. What does that do in this game? Hits unerringly. At first level, does 1d4 damage. And if they fail a saving throw versus spells, they're surrounded by light in a 15-foot radius. In low light conditions, attacks against target gain a +2 bonus. Okay. Well, it's guaranteed d4 damage, and potentially in a dungeon, obviously, most of the time it's going to be a +2 bonus. Well, yeah, chromatic orb, not as amazing as I think later versions of it, but sure. Yeah. I mean, what else do I really need to say here? I feel like we've kind of discussed OSE. And this is, I mean, this is kind of the OG. This is what people were playing back in 1981, for the most part. And so you can see like how much has still carried over and influenced plenty of other games over the decades. But at the same time, it's like, ooh. When I finished looking at Axe, I was like, man, I'm kind of conflicted here because there's a lot of stuff that's still kind of kludgy and just slow, you know, and it's so much mechanics. But there's also so many cool things here that I'm going to steal for other games. Like Axe is going to continue to be in the back of my head for a long time. But looking at OSE, it's just like, yep, this is how those poor bastards had to play back then. Like, I don't know if there's really anything in OSE that I looked at that I was like, oh, I might steal that idea. Because every idea possible in here has been stolen and evolved and amplified and changed in various ways. This is like the framework of the framework. So, yeah, I mean, I said I was going to make some other characters, but there isn't really much point because character creation is damn simple and quick, and there's not really any choices to be made here. And then, I mean, we could run through something, but honestly, I don't even know if I feel like it. Because anything I'd run through, it just would be better or easier to run through it with Shadow Dark or even like Dungeon Crawl Classics. Dungeon Crawl Classics is another one that's like, some consider OSR, but it's not really. It's kind of influenced a lot by 3.5 edition, actually. And it's not... it does a lot of things differently, and it's kind of meant to be just a wackier game. I should have the rulebook, actually. Hold on. I should have the rulebook here somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classic is another one that I could try doing some stuff solo with, because I do think it is a pretty cool game. I'm not overly fond of the sort of gonzo aspect of DCC, where it's meant to just be kind of wacky and kind of over the top weird. I don't really care about that. Like, I tend to like my fantasy pretty straight, which, yeah, I understand is kind of boring, but I don't know. I don't really get bored of it too much. Well, straight, but also dark. I prefer dark over weird, for sure. I'm definitely more like a grim dark kind of guy. Right, so DCC has a few things that are pretty different. One is the dice chain. So, like, you're not necessarily using a d20 to resolve, like, d20 rolls. You might be penalized, or you might have a penalty, or you might get bonuses, or something like that. And rather than doing advantage, or rather than necessarily adding, like, a +3 to the roll, you may increase the size of the die. So you might be rolling a d24 instead, or a d30. Or you might be bumped down. You might have to roll a d16, and so you can't get higher than the 16. Not really that big of a deal when playing virtually, but at an actual table, it's just like, why? Like, why? I don't want to find a d24. I'm pretty sure they have rules for how to do all that with other dice, I think, but yeah, The funny that most of my DCC experience comes from like funnels, and that never really comes up in funnels. So it's never been a problem at like conventions and stuff. I don't even know if they have. I don't know if it played at a convention game, a funnel, where the DM had those dice. I don't know. It's never come up. And obviously it's for like higher level stuff usually. So if you're familiar with D20 system 3.0 and 3.5, it specifically mentions those. DCC does not have prestige classes, attacks of opportunity, feats, or skill points. And classes and races are one and the same. You are a wizard or an elf. DCC uses Ascending Armor class. Attack, saves, skill checks all involve rolling a d20 and trying to beat a number, so no rolling under for ability checks. And there are 3 saving throws: Fortitude, Reflex, and Willpower. So you can see a lot of that stuff taken from like 3rd edition and stuff. Not based at all on 1st edition or BX. Clerics turn creatures that are unholy to their religion. So not necessarily undead, depending on the cleric's religion. Whereas old school always defaulted to the basic cleric kind of religion system. Spell checks are very different in DCC, where you can roll... and that's mainly what I want to look at, is spells, so we'll get to that. And wizards may or may not lose their spells after a casting. Depending on how well you roll and stuff, yeah, you may be able to cast a spell multiple times per day, which is fun. Very fun. I love it. Cleric spell casting, they never lose a spell when it's cast, but they may fail and increase their natural failure range. And so at a certain point, by the end of the day, you may automatically fail on more rolls than just a natural one. There's also critical hit matrices. So because your higher level characters are critting on more than 20s, so crits are going to come up more, and there's different tables for all the crits, which I find to be pretty fun. I know some people find tedious. For every crit and every crit fumble, there's like a different table that has to be looked up and blah blah blah. And you can also burn off ability scores to enhance dice rolls. So every character has a luck score, and bad things usually happen to characters that have low luck, but you can burn your luck to increase dice rolls as like a last ditch effort. Often comes up when we're doing funnels, especially at conventions where you're only playing the one thing, burn every last luck point you got. But wizards and elves can burn other abilities, so you can burn stuff, spell burn, to increase your spell roll. And I definitely know I've done that. So, no, maybe they don't talk about using normal dice to simulate the dice chain. Oh, here it is. It's easy to substitute with a regular dice set. So if you're doing like a d30, you add 1d10. No, you roll 1d10 with a 6-sided control die. Add +0 on 1 to 2, +10 on 3 to 4, and +20 on 5 to 6. Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I get it. It's ridiculous, and it's just like, I don't know what people that normally... If I was a normal player of DCC and that was like our system, I'd buy the fucking dice. I mean, absolutely I would. You only really need one. I mean, it's not going to come up that often, I imagine. Ability scores are a little different. Not too different, but you got strength, agility, stamina, personality, intelligence, and luck. So there's no will, really. Personality kind of combines wisdom and charisma. And then you also have luck, which is DM. If a DM needs something bad to happen to a specific or a random player, you might just pick the one that has the lowest luck, or everyone does a luck roll. And luck, yeah, your modifier for luck can affect a lot of other stuff. Critical hits, fumbles, corruption, some other rolls. You can burn luck, blah, blah, blah. You can potentially restore luck, so on and so forth. So on and so forth. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mostly just wanted to look at a couple of classes thing, because there are some very interesting things here. Yeah, so there's different deities for the cleric, so you might worship one of the neutral gods, and then unholy creatures for you that you can turn are mundane animals, undead, demons, devils, monsters, lycanthropes, and perversions of nature. So you can actually turn mundane animals, which is cool. Whereas if you're a chaotic cleric, you can turn angels, paladins, lawful dragons, lords of law, lawful primes, and law-aligned humanoids, such as goblins. What? Thief skills also now just operate off a D20 roll, and you have to beat a DC, so this is pretty modern stuff. So, like pickpocketing from an unaware target with a loose pocket and unsecured coin pouch is DC 5. But picking the pocket of a target that is actively watching and monitoring their belongings is DC 20. So, you know, DM just sets DC and you roll a D20 and add your modifier. Right. So your bonuses and everything for all that kind of shit you get is depending on your alignment. So chaotic thieves are much better at backstabbing, sneaking silently, disguising themselves, handling poison. Lawful thieves are much better at hiding, climbing, finding traps, disabling traps. Neutral thieves good at sneaking, picking pockets, climbing sheer surfaces, forging documents. Interesting stuff, depending on the type of thief you want to be. Warriors get one of the most sort of well-praised aspects of DCC, and that's the mighty deeds. Mighty deeds of arms. So basically, every time that you do an attack, prior to any attack roll, you can declare a mighty deed of arms. This is any sort of dramatic combat maneuver within the scope of the current combat. You might try to disarm an enemy, trip, smash them backwards. Any sort of in-combat effect. Pushing back an enemy, tripping or entangling him, temporarily blinding him, so on. So anything you can think of prior to the attack roll. And then you roll your d20 plus your deed die, which depends on your level. So at level 1, it's a D3. At level 6, it's a D8. And if the deed die is 3 or higher and the attack lands, so it's a successful attack, then your deed also occurs. So at level 1, you got to roll a 3 on your D3, but eventually you're very likely to succeed. And your D die is also used for your attack and damage modifier for that round. So as you level up, I mean, you're adding a D8 to all your attacks and damage, and that's also your D die. It's a pretty simple system, you know, but it's very flexible, and they give a bunch of examples here. Actual mighty deeds of arms performed by real players in real games. When fighting opponents on a staircase, the character uses a sword to stab an opponent and then lever him over the edge of the staircase. Later, the same character tried attacking the foe's legs to knock him over the edge. When facing a carven image with eyes that shot laser beams, he used a mace to smash out the carved eyes. Another game tried a similar attack to stab out the eyes of a basilisk and disarm its hypnotic gaze. When fighting a flying skull that was out of melee reach, the character leaped from the back of an ally into a flying lunge that brought him within reach of a melee swing at the skull. When fighting enemies arrayed in a single file line, a character hurled a javelin and tried to spear both of the front two enemies. When fighting a chaos beast with a scorpion tail, a character attempted to chop off the tail. Designed to encourage exciting stunts by ambitious warriors in the tradition of literary heroes. The goal was to create a rule system that encouraged situation-specific freedom without creating a lot of cumbersome rules. Yeah. I really don't have much experience because, again, most of my experience with DCC has been funnels, and so that's all just level 0 peasants. So I don't actually have any experience playing with Mighty Deeds, but reading, just from a reading perspective, it seems really cool. Seems pretty modern and narrative, while also being a relatively simple and effective mechanic. And I've heard a lot of people praise it as one of the better parts of the whole system. So, yeah, I think it's pretty sweet. So then you get into wizards. And their character section is pretty simple. But that's because most of their complexity is in their actual spells. So, at level 1, they know 4 spells. That's pretty great. That's already pretty great. You know 4 spells, and you might not even lose them after casting them. Awesome! That's all there really is to say about Wizard. You also get a patron, which determines, I think, the type of spells available to you. Let's look at spells, because then we'll be done. This is mostly what I wanted to talk about. Also, the crit tables. So these are crit tables, depending on your class and level. So crit table 1 is for all 0 level characters and wizards forever. Thieves and elves get to use crit table 2. Clerics, halflings, warriors 1 and 2, dwarves 1 to 3 get to use this one. 3 to 4 warriors, 4 plus dwarves use this one, and 5 plus warriors get access to the best crit table. Foe decapitated. You are death incarnate. Continue to make attacks against any foes within 10 feet until you miss. I love shit like this. I love crit tables. I think it's always... because I'm not very creative. So you could just describe some of these things happening, when enemies die or whatever. But, I just love crit tables that just, like, the enemy's bladder explodes and they piss all over them. It's just like... that's one of the most memorable things we had happen in a Warhammer game. Was we just stabbed some guy in the bladder and it just exploded all over himself. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of rules, but mostly you want to get to the magic. Corruption and mercurial magic, deity disapproval, blah, 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 blah. Right. Okay. So here's the wizard spells. And you can see there's a lot of text for each individual spell. And that's because any given spell ranges quite a lot in its power depending on your role. So let's find just a pretty... like magic missile. Okay, here's magic missile. So level 1 spell, it's a range of 150 feet or more. Casting time 1 action or 1 turn. You hurl a magical missile that automatically hits an enemy. Right? Then you can roll to see how it manifests, whether it's a force arrow or a ray of frost or ball lightning. Doesn't really matter, just thematic. Corruption. So if you roll corruption or whatever, you get corrupted while casting it. If you misfire the spell, so if you roll like a 1, you can misfire. And then you get to roll this fun table where it just might explode in your hands or whatever. Yeah. So if you roll a 1 on the misfire table, explosion of missiles spray in all directions. All creatures within 100 feet are hit by 1d4 minus 1 missiles, each doing 1 point of damage. Not that big of a deal, but in a crowded market or something, just missiles. Alright, so then you do your spell roll. And again, this can be modified by a lot of things. We didn't go over all the rules of what can increase the roll, which is largely spell burn and stuff. So your spell check, D20, add your caster level. You also add your intelligence modifier for being a wizard. And if you roll a 20, you add an additional bonus to the check equal to your level. And then spell burn, you can burn points of strength, agility, or stamina. For every ability point you expend, you add +1 to the spell check. And this is before you roll, so you can't determine afterwards to bump it up like 5 points to get to another effect. Ability scores lost in this way return as you heal. Each day you do not attempt spell burn, you recover 1 point of ability score. So yeah, you can burn like 12 points of stuff, but then it's going to take a while to recover. But it's very powerful, especially because of how powerful the higher level effects are. So, you know, at level 1, you're adding like, I don't know, +3 or something to this roll. So on average, you might get the 12 to 13 effect here or something. You throw a single missile, it does 1 point of damage. You must have line of sight to the target. The missile never misses, though it may be blocked by certain magic. Okay, not very good, 1 point of damage, but you didn't lose it. You know, you didn't lose it. It's just sitting there. You can cast it right again the next turn, or next, you know, your next round. Whereas if you get a 2 to 11, it fails and you lose the spell for the rest of the day. If you get a 1, you lose it. It failed. And worse, you got to roll a 1d6 modified by your luck score, which is going to be a misfire at best. But worse, it might be patron taint or corruption, or patron taint and corruption and the misfire. So yeah, you don't want to roll 1s, but the risk is there. But if you bump it up and you get luckier, 14 to 17, you deal damage equal to 1d4 plus your level. 18 and 19, you throw 1d4 missiles, dealing damage equal to 1d4 plus your level, all at a single target. But then if you get even higher than that, throw 1d4 plus 2 missiles that do damage equal to 1d6 plus your caster level. And you can aim it at different targets. And then you're like, okay, this thing needs to fucking die today, now, absolutely now. I'm going to burn everything I got in my body to just propel this spell into, into the greatest of ethers. And you get like a 32 plus on the roll. You throw 3d4 plus 2 missiles that each do damage equal to 1d10 plus your level. And you can even throw this at a single target that is not present or visible, provided you have specific knowledge of it. You have to have a physical memento of the target and spend 1 turn concentrating to cast the spell. Seeks it out to a range of 100 miles, even if they're concealed or invisible. Travel up to 10 miles per second. So it's just you perform this ritual in your home, and you're sitting there and you waste away every physical attribute you have to just send this barrage of missiles at some guy, the fucking king or something, and they just shoot out across the plane and destroy his brain. Fantastic. So yeah, I really love the spell system, partly because, there's a decent chance, even at level 1, that you might have a good amount of spells per day, which I always love. I hate the idea of 1 spell and that's it per day. But also just the potential power available to you, even at level 1, if you're willing to burn it all. Fantastic. And so the one time we actually played DCC at like a level 1 instead of just a funnel, we did do a game of it, and we were in this little town. And we really wanted to like take over the town because we didn't like the guy running it. We didn't like his operation, and we're like, we can do this. We can take over the whole town. We just got to wipe out the guy, the leader, and all of his like burly men. And so we gathered them all up, and I'm like, okay, I got the sleep spell, and I'm gonna spell burn the shit out of this. I don't remember what I got. I want to say it was either 24 to 27 or the next step up. I think it was 24 to 27. Up to 8 targets must save or fall into a normal sleep for 1d7 days, or 1 target can be placed in a supernatural sleep for 1d3 days with no saving throw. Normal sleep can be interrupted by normal means. Supernatural sleep can be disrupted only via dispel magic or similar cancellation effects. However, both must have a specified interrupt condition which automatically awakens the target. Yeah, I think it was one of those, because I definitely think we just put those guys to sleep. And I'm pretty sure they all failed their save. It was like, it felt insanely powerful at level 1. We put them all to sleep, and then we just quickly stabbed them all in the throat, and we became the rulers of the town, of the village. It was a village. It was a small village. But it was just like, yeah, I mean, that felt potent as a magic user. And I was skin and bones. I was like nothing for like 2 weeks afterwards, but we took over the village. And it just felt so gratifying. So yeah, I really like the spell system. I really think it's good. And I like the Mighty Deeds of Arms and concept. I like a lot of what DCC does, even though most of my experience is funnels. I think overall it's still a little too lethal. It's a little too weird for me to want to run it for like my family. They still wouldn't care for the lethality. And I know it's lethal because in that game we did do of it. One of my friend, his character, we were just riding through on like a carriage down a road, and we got ambushed by centaurs, and he just immediately took an arrow in the neck and died, and that was it. And we had come from like 4th edition D&D, so this was shocking, just unprecedented. And I still remember it because it was like we couldn't believe it. But yeah, it's I think it's a good game. I just don't know when I'd get around again to playing it outside of convention funnels. But there's definitely good ideas here. And I would rather play this than OSE like any day of the week. I'll say that. So anyways, I think that's all I really have to say. So for those that were super excited to see me do some solo playtime of OSE and classic BX D&D, sorry to disappoint. Yeah, it's just a little too archaic for me. And I don't mind playing, I mean, I really enjoyed playing like the gold box D&D CRPGs. But that's because it's a video game. It's not really representative of what it's like to play D&D. Much like Baldur's Gate 3 is not indicative of playing 5th edition D&D. So I don't mind, the mechanical rules of those games and actually doing the combats and stuff. But sitting here and playing it solo or running it for a group of people or something like that, it's just like, there's so many better alternatives. So, yeah, I don't know, I'm not thrilled by it. I'm not thrilled by it. Doesn't excite me, so that's all there is to say. That's really the only 2 games that I currently had an interest in, like, kind of looking at, was Axe and OSE. There's a lot of other OSR games I could look at, but I feel like those were the only 2 ones that I had a strong interest in checking out currently. There's other fantasy games I might want to take a look at. I think the big one I'd really like to take a look at when it's like actually done is Matt Colville's game, Draw Steel. Because I know he's a fan of like 4th edition D&D, It has, I don't really know much about it. I haven't backed anything or anything like that, so but I like the Flea Mortals bestiary that he put out. So I'm hoping Draw Steel is kind of heavily similar to that. But anyways, I guess that's it. My name is Mang. This has been Let's Read Old School Essentials. And I'll see you fine folks around.